Well, when it comes to investing, many Canadians may think of the Toronto Stock Exchange, but not everyone may be aware of another option, the Canadian Securities Exchange, or CSE. Now, according to its website, the CSE began operations with an aim to provide a modern and efficient alternative for companies looking to access the Canadian public markets. The CSE is operated by CNSX Markets Incorporated, and it was recognized as a stock exchange in 2004. Well, with us now to highlight the CSE and its role in Canada's economy is Brendan Caldwell, Director of Caldwell Securities Ltd. Brendan is also on the board of the CSE and is a major investor through Client Holdings. He joins us now. Brendan, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Thank you, Nima, and thank you for the disclaimer. It saves me the trouble.
Definitely, Brendan. Now, as we mentioned, investors have heard of the Toronto Stock Exchange, but they might not be aware of the Canadian Securities Exchange, or CSE. So what exactly is the CSE?
Well, for the last 19 years, the CSE has been a competitor to the Toronto Venture Exchange, or the TSX Venture Exchange, which was set up to make it easier for entrepreneurial companies, smaller companies to get listed. Well, the CSE for the last 19 years has actually been a major competitor in that venture area, and where it started out doing oil and gas and mining exploration companies, branched out now into technology, Bitcoin and blockchain related companies. It's developed a major market in cannabis and even in psychedelic related companies. So it's doing the leading edge as well as the basic industries that Canada is famous for.
And how much of an impact has it had on the Canadian economy so far?
Well, it's been big. If you take the cannabis sector alone, a study by Deloitte a year or so ago said that I think between 2018 and 2021, cannabis sector added something like $50 billion to Canada's GDP. And the Canadian Securities Exchange is the leading listings venue in the world for cannabis stocks. My kids joke, I don't know what cannabis looks like. I've never used this stuff. They suggest maybe I could do with it with a gummy or two, but it has been a major industry, and the TSX, for whatever reason, decided it didn't want to list cannabis companies that had any exposure into the US. I suppose the realistic reason was that at least federally, cannabis is still illegal in the US. So that all these companies got listed on Canada, on the CSX and CSE, I should say, and it's been a huge boon to the Canadian economy, just that one sector alone.
Quite the sector indeed. Now, why is the CSE important to entrepreneurs in particular, Brendan?
Well, really since the tech wreck in the early 2000s and the financial crisis, rules upon rules and have been laden upon public companies to make it very difficult for them to go public. And there's been even increasing amount of suspicion about public companies, and made it very, very difficult, particularly in the US, but also here in Canada, to become a public company. The CSE has tried to streamline that process and make it easier. As the former CSE chairman was fond of saying, we have a secret strategy. We're nice to our customers. And it has meant that, say, in the mining sector, with metal prices going so high and the need for particularly some of the rare earths metals to actually get out of the ground in a jurisdiction that's less unfriendly to the West than some of the places it comes from. Anyway, helping these companies get on track and get public and raise money quicker is going to be a major factor, not just for the Canadian economy and Canadian stock markets, but also for the effort to move toward green technology.
Definitely, Brendan. Now, just about a minute left here, but we spoke about the cannabis sector. Would you be able to share with us some of the other companies that are listed on the CSE?
Well, again, I alluded to the mining sector, and what's happening now is that in the old days of Canadian mining, they would be so-called greenfield exploration, where they didn't know where the metals were. These companies would raise money hoping they'd find something. But what's happening now, and what the CSE is doing at the moment, is allowing public companies to get listed and raise money. But unlike those greenfield explorations, they already know where the metals are. They actually, because in the old days, the prices for both rare earths and basic industrial metals were not high enough to justify mining. But now, with the very what it was going to say, a very quick, relatively amount of work, they can prove up the reserves in those properties and get production going sooner than might have been in the past. So the CSE makes that securities fundraising process much easier, and again helps the economy, and particularly toward green initiatives has been a real boon.
All right, Brendan, always great having you on Foreign Daily. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, Nima.